Hey, how are you? This is Daniel Rezendi, and today we're going to have an international look on why Australia is richer than New Zealand. And this is the photo of the day. It's me in New Zealand. I've only been there once in January 2025, and I lived in Australia for a little over a year, mostly in Melbourne. I'm not super qualified to talk about them, but I'll talk about them anyway. So let's start. Is Australia actually much wealthier than New Zealand? This is actually not a very controversial issue. Most people know and agree that Australia is wealthier than New Zealand. Some people might still prefer to live in New Zealand, but in terms of just pure salary, wages, GDP, Australia is better than New Zealand. And the Kiwis, they realize that because there's a lot of Kiwis in Australia. So some estimates indicate that between 500,000 and 600,000 New Zealand-born people live in Australia, which is crazy because that might be over 10% of the whole Kiwi population moving to just one single country. It is very impressive, and there's a much smaller number of Australians living in New Zealand. So it does go both ways, but not at the same proportion. And Australia has had consistently higher GDP per capita than New Zealand. It also has higher HGI, which, well, GDP per capita is a large part of HGI, so that makes sense. It has higher salaries. The Australian dollar is a little bit stronger than the Kiwi dollar. And like I said, 10% of Kiwis pretty much live in Australia already. So a few more data for you. Australia, like I said, has a higher nominal GDP, has a higher PPP, that is purchasing power parity adjusted GDP as well. It has a much higher median wealth per adult, which we're going to talk about later, and also a higher average wealth per adult. There's a saying with Kiwis where you go to Australia, and in Australia, you make more money, you pay less taxes, and then things are less expensive. And this is definitely a general feeling that I've talked to a lot of Kiwis about, and a lot of them believe. So, what might be the factors behind that? So, some reasons I don't buy. A lot of people talk about natural resources, and it is true, Australia is one of the luckiest countries in the world in terms of just natural resources per capita. Uh, Also, some people say that Australia is just bigger and having a bigger economy helps it get richer. But I would say it's actually the opposite. If you see the top countries with natural resources in general, you're going to see Russia, you're going to see Iran, you're going to see China, you're going to see Iraq, you're going to see Venezuela, you're going to see Brazil. And of course, there is the US, Canada, Saudi Arabia, and Australia as well. And those are richer countries. But to say that having a lot of natural resources is some sort of guarantee to being wealthy, I think that this clearly indicates that it isn't the case. There's countries with not a lot of natural resources like Japan, like Switzerland, that are in fact very rich. And even though I'm sure that mining and the mining booms help Australia, I don't think they can be entirely responsible for Australia's higher wealth than New Zealand. A second point that I hear a lot is that Australia is just bigger. It has a bigger economy, and then economies of scales just kind of help Australia be consistently better off than New Zealand. But if you're going to notice, the highest countries by HDI and also by GDP per capita for that matter, if you see Switzerland, Norway, Iceland, Hong Kong, Denmark, Sweden, Ireland, Netherlands, everyone except for Germany, they're much closer to the size of New Zealand than they are to the size of Australia, not only in terms of population, but obviously also in terms of size. And you got to think, well, if it works fine for those countries, why is it not working for New Zealand? So I actually think that Australia is an exception and not a rule in being a very big, large country that is actually wealthy. And out of the top countries in the world for HDR, it definitely is one of the ones that has the most population. So this is definitely interesting to think about as well. So let's move on. Those are a few of the explanations that I like more. Doesn't mean they're right, but it is some sort of indication. So Australia, first of all, is much more decentralized. If you see here, Australia has around 537 local councils, whereas New Zealand has 78. And even if you do that proportionally to population, it does mean that Australia is much more local, it's much more localized, and it really just helps, not only into states, because Australia does have states and New Zealand is a unitary government, but also in local governments. Its welfare states have historically been, well, a little different. So Australia does have a smaller welfare state, even today, than New Zealand does. And a lot of its taxes are smaller as well. Australia has a lower consumption tax in the form of VAT. It is only, or GST is what they call it, 10% in Australia, 15% in New Zealand. Things in Australia are generally cheaper. And on top of that, Australia, especially on the lower brackets, actually taxes people less. It does have a higher total taxation at the top of 45% compared to 39%. And also there's a Medicare levy of 2%. But for most people making between, I don't know, 30 and $150,000 a year, you're going to pay actually less taxes in Australia than you would in New Zealand. And I want to mention one more thing, which in my opinion is the biggest single difference that helps Australians and Aussies just go further and be better off, which is Australia's superannuation system. Every employer in Australia is mandated to pay 12% of the workers' wages into a fund in the employee's name. And that is huge. Australia has by far the biggest and most comprehensive self-funded retirement system in the world. Most Aussies that, let's say, are 35, 45, even 55 nowadays, they've been contributing to superannuation for years now, and it shows. Those funds, they grow, they accumulate. The Aussies can use them to buy a house. They can use them to retire after age 60. And Australia is literally the single country in the world that's expected, well, in the developed world, sorry, that's expected to have lower and lower spending on pensions, because so many people are going to be able to live entirely off of the money that they themselves accumulated without even knowing it, because really it's not a choice. It's not taken even out of your salary. It's just on top of your salary by your employer. And this is such a good pension system. And obviously, if everyone from the moment they start working is saving directly or indirectly, consciously or unconsciously, 12% of the wages in a mandated way, it's not even optional. Of course, you're going to have a wealthier population that has a better retirement quality, that has more just disposable income in general. It helps capital markets as well, because with so many people investing, with so much money being forcefully thrown into the investment economy, you're going to have just a easier, more liquid market as well, which helps the whole country's economy. Now, that only started in the 1990s, and it has been growing till today. So I'm not saying that that's the only reason why Australia is richer than New Zealand, but it is an indication that Australia is just so willing to have different solutions to problems like dividend imputation, like superannuation, like the way their voting works, which is just so good. I recently learned that secret ballots were earlier, like 100 years ago, were called the Australian ballot because they literally originated in Australia. It was pretty much the first modern country to have secret votes. And it is very innovative. It is it has more of a hands-off approach. It is more free market, and it works. It works for Aussies. They're one of the richest peoples in the world, and much richer than the Kiwis, like I just showed you. So wrapping up, Australia has historically been more open to trade, having lower taxes and higher reliance on local governance, and obviously the federal states as well, which resulted in a wide gap in wealth being open in comparison to New Zealand. Their superannuation system is much more robust and directly increases individual wealth. Though some reforms were made in the right direction, there's still a long way to go if Kiwis ever intend to catch up. How about you? What do you think about New Zealand and Australia? Let me know in the comments below.